Hi everyone, so it is 7 o'clock. We'll get the meeting started today. So we're the East Greenville Community Library Board of Trustees. This is the February 24th, 2026 meeting. Paul Porter, I'm the president. We'll do a quick review of the agenda. Want to see any things that they are recognition at the front end. We'll go into our 2025 audit.
We have, I'll just quickly introduce.
Yeah, oh yeah.
We have Bob Gramalia and Nick Gramalia from Gramalia Associates.
Thank you. Thanks for having us today. What we're gonna go over today is the actual financial statements and the audit communications related to the 12/31/25 audit report related to the library. I'm gonna start by going through the audit communications as I do every year. I'll have Nick turn over to Nicholas and go through the number side of things. I always say the audit communications is the most important thing for the board of directors to understand the audit process. And during January 16/26, there was a letter issued from us to you, basically detailed what's management's responsibilities related to the financial. You might say, what is that? It's your responsibility to understand the financial reporting process. You basically have to understand, you have that fiduciary responsibility to make sure all the information that's presented to you is accurate and correct. We encourage people to ask questions and things of that nature. But that's really what your responsibility is for overall financial statements. Our responsibility is to make sure that numbers are accurate in accordance with what we call the modified cash basis of accounting in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards. So those are our basic responsibilities. What we try to do is understand that everything's at reasonable assurance, meaning we can't audit absolutely 100% of the transactions. There are during the engagement, or was it we'd be here for a lot longer time. For the most part, we look at risk areas. Where do we think the overall significant risks are related to the organizations and things of that nature? We gain understanding of the internal controls, sit with everybody during the audit to understand what the processes are. Are there good controls that would mitigate any material errors and things of that nature? And in doing so, we say we come across that if we had to any significant matters, we would communicate. I'm happy to say there are no significant deficiencies or material weaknesses, which are internal control deficiencies that we need to report to the board. So excellent job by management to making sure that all of those key controls are still in place within the organization. As I indicated before, we do look at significant risks. What are those significant risks? We have to look at each entity separate that we do an audit. Yours relates to you have a lot of restrictions with a lot of your donations that come through. So we like to make sure that the restrictions are met and things of that nature. And also property, plant, and equipment, making sure that you're capitalizing things that you're required to capitalize and you're depreciating those items properly from year to year. We looked at those significant audit areas. We did not see any risk to bring to the attention at the end of the audit. So overall, everything was reported properly in regard to all of those areas. Plan scope and timing of the audit. We began in January 2026. As I indicated, we documented the internal controls and processes. We tested the net assets with restrictions as it relates to the releases. Basically, did it have a restriction and were the restrictions met in which we could release those restrictions from restrictions to unrestricted in the current year. And then basically we do audit of the balance sheets of cash, fixed assets, accounts payable, things of that nature. And then we do an analytical review of the revenue and expense to make sure that we believe everything is correct based on the expectations that we had during the audit process. We do various cleanup and wrap-up procedures that were done in February within our offices. We had a separate partner, not me, do a technical standards review related to the audit to make sure that we met all the standards related to the engagement. And then overall, gave a, what I'd like to say, an unmodified opinion related to the audit, which is the best opinion you can get in a financial statement. We call that a clean audit, is another name. That's kind of the preliminary stages. Then we have, this is the final communications. This is what I'm actually presenting to today based on the results of the audit. Significant accounting policies, we believe they are all disclosed within note 2 of the financial statements. We have went over those, significant accounting policies with Jill, Dawn, and everyone, and nothing has really changed during the year, nor did any standards change in the current year that required us to make modifications to any of those significant accounting policies. It was kind of quite a year for us in regards to the standard side of things, which we as auditors like to some extent. But there's some coming down the pipe that could have impact later on. All transactions we believe are reported in the proper period. As I indicated, there is accounts payable on your books. So we like to see that are the expenses reported in the proper period related to each one, and there were no issues related to that. Accounting estimates, there are accounting estimates within these financial statements. Your responsibility is to understand the significant estimates. I'm here to tell you that significant estimate is depreciation. Why we consider it a significant risk is properly reported. We've looked at those calculations, we've reviewed those calculations, and we feel everything is accurate related to the lives as well as the consistency of applying those fixed asset lives to each one of the assets. Disclosures, they're pretty much the same as they were in the prior year. As I indicated, no new standards out there, so we feel they're neutral, consistent, and clear. I'm happy to say there were no difficulties encountered performing the audit. Dawn, Jill, excellent job. Once again, fact that we didn't have, and I'm kind of getting to the next point, there were no uncorrected journal entries that were material to the financial statements, nor did we pass on any audit adjustments. Any adjustment that was either immaterial or whatever, management would typically make to those financial statements. We didn't have any past audit adjustments related to the engagement. So excellent job to Jill and everyone in the finance department to make sure that the information you're presented is accurate, because that's important because you're making decisions on a month-to-month basis based on those numbers. Disagreements, once again, we did not have any disagreements with management. Management representations, I'm one slide ahead of you. That's okay. Management representations, we basically sent the representation letter over to Jill. She reviewed the representations and she provided, it basically says, do you provide everything to us within that representation letter? And she signed off that yes, she did, in regards to everything we asked, etc. Consultations, if you needed a second opinion on anything, we'd ask that. They know all the relevant facts. There was none of that to our knowledge to discuss. I mean, as I said, there were no industry changes or standards for that matter. I think the most important thing for you to understand as a board is we are independent of your organization. We're not involved in your day-to-day record keeping. Jill may call and have a few questions here or there on how to treat something. We give our guidance in regards to that, but we're not doing your daily inputs, which is important because if we were, that would impair our independence. So we're allowed to give an opinion related to these financial statements. Any questions in the audit of communications? I'm going to turn it over to Nick, and he's going to basically go through, the balance sheet and income statement related to the organization.
All right, so we're going to start with the balance sheet for 25 and 24. So just to get started, as my dad pointed out, you guys have restricted, like unrestricted funds and non-unrestricted funds. Now, if you don't know what that means, is for example, you receive money from donors that are restricted spending in certain things, and that would be classified under your donor restricted portion, whereas your without donor restriction is money that you guys have and you can spend. However, you'll see something new to the financials in the current year. You have $115,000 that we consider cash and cash equivalents that are restricted. That is money that relates to the money that you guys have to spend towards the grant that you got in regards to matching in New York State. So that's not really restricted from a donor perspective. It's restricted that you have to spend that in order to have that money or you can hold it back. So I just want to, that's kind of an example of the difference between donor restricted and non-donor restricted. But going forward, to start with your total current assets, you'll see you had a decrease in the current year to roughly 1.7 million compared to 1.8. Really, that decrease is due to your increase in net property, plant, and equipment that you see down below from 2.2 to 2.5. You guys had a lot of upgrades to the building in the current year. For example, you purchased windows, I think, for like 150 something thousand. And just, yeah, a bunch of new upgrades in regards to the building. Then the only other big change that you'll notice, if you look up, you'll see prepaid expenses in the current year for 14,000. That is due to the fact that your payroll ended on 1/1. However, it came out of the bank on 12/31. So instead of recording that as a accrued expense in the current year due to the fact that you guys are a modified cash basis, we decided to put that in prepaid expenses.
It's really just a timing difference,
Correct.
from an audit perspective. It's not something you'll typically see from year to year. That was our way of, simplifying it, make it easy to actually keep it according to what your budget is.
And with that being said, so you'll see you have total assets in the current year, so 4.2 million compared to 4.1 in the prior year. Moving on to the next slide. You'll see this is your liabilities and net assets. You don't really have, or you don't have any long-term liabilities. You have no debt or anything. It really just relates to your accrued expenses. So as you'll see, there was a big increase in the current year to 57,000 versus 16,000 prior year. The only, I mean, that really just relates to timing. It all depends on what bills come in after year end that relate to 2025. Just a couple examples, you got a lot of snow plowing bills in January that related to 25, so that's part of the increase in current year. But as you go down, you'll see your total net assets went from roughly 4.1 million to 4,100,000. So, right, kind of, you'll see when we get to the next slide that we did have a slight profit in the current year. But if you look at your total liabilities and your net assets, you'll see that the 4.2 million ties to your total assets on the prior side, 4.2 million. Moving on to the income statement. You did have a decrease in revenue in the current year to 2.5 million from 2.7. Really, that just relates to what I brought up before. In the prior year, you did get a big grant for, I think, like 312,000. Whereas you see that number in the current year under grants and contributions only 52,000. And then the only other major change is your tax revenue, which just increased in the current year, as you can see, to 2.4 million from 2.2. All right, moving on to your expenses. This is kind of just a summary of your expenses on this slide. You'll see in the current year, you did have an increase to 2.4 million compared to 2.2. But going down, the change in net assets, you did have a profit of 60,000 compared to the big profit in the prior year. Again, that really just relates to the grant that you received in the prior year. Overall, though, you had an increase in your net assets of $60,723. And to get into the detail of your expenses, if you go to the next slide. Yet again, I mean, I keep saying there's really not much. If we were being honest, this year, from the prior year, there really were no major changes at all. You'll see that you had an increase in salaries to 1.7 from 1.6. We test salaries by going back to the payroll register and tying everything out. And I'm gonna it tied out to the exact dollar, so really there's no issues there. And then the only other big thing would be your facilities and maintenance did increase. And the only reason that increase is due to the fact that you guys had the roof leak and you had a lot of expenses related to that. But as you can see, you did have an increase of expenses from 2.4 to 2.2.
Which is mostly just salary driven.
Correct.
And you find that from year to year, you're gonna have increases in the salaries every year, in an organization's perspective. We spend a lot of time in that area, looking at your controls, making sure the controls over payroll. And like Nick said, basically reconcile the information, to make sure that's all.
Yeah, usually you'll see jump in expenses from year to year in some cases, but this year, like I said, it's pretty straightforward, it's just salary. And then that's slight increase in facilities and maintenance. Okay, so moving on to the next slide, this is just a 3-year comparison of your revenue. As you can see, you had that major increase in the prior year, which you see a decrease in the current year. That really just, I know I'm harping on it, but that really just relates to that $312,000 grant that you see in the prior years.
And you might say to yourself, like, why do we have grant revenue and no expenses? But just to give you an idea, those expenses won't be capitalized on the balance sheet, they're recorded in property, plant, and equipment, so it's not on the expense side. So that shows as profit, but really it's capitalized and it'll be depreciated over time, yeah, so just to give you an idea.
That's why you had that roughly $300,000 increase in fixed assets. All right, moving on to the next slide, it's a comparison of your program expenditures from year to year. As you can see, you guys are right around 91% every year, which shows that from an organization perspective, you guys are spending money towards the programmatic side, towards the mission of the organization, instead of spending it towards the administrative side, as you'll see in the next slide. Your admin expenses are roughly 9%, which from the state perspective, they want to see you between 15 and 10%. So you guys are doing very well from spending your money towards admin. Moving on. I kind of covered this already. But with that being said, really, this is just a summary breakdown of the notes, the financial statements. If anyone has any questions about a specific note, we could go over it. But other than that, my dad already said it, you guys had an unmodified opinion, which is the cleanest opinion that you can get. And the bottom line is you have a profit of roughly $16,000 in the Any questions?
The good news is, I mean, from an overall perspective, just as a summary, it was a quality audit, clean audit, unmodified opinion, which is the best opinion you get. No internal control findings, no journal entries. I mean, you can't get a better report than that. So I think that's the bottom line that we should be happy with, and that's the overall summary related to the audit.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It's good to see you.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, it's great seeing everybody again. And like I said, if you have any questions, you all know where to reach out to us, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Jill, we will be in touch this week in regards to the.
Paper. Okay. Great. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right,
Have a
so
good night.
have a good night.
I'm safe.
Space, real quick, public comment. Seeing none, go on to approval of minutes. So we got our minutes from our January 20th, 2026 meeting. Anyone have any questions or comments on it? Seeing none, motion to approve the minutes of the January 20th, 2026 library board meeting. Got Kayla. Second. I got Sarah. Any comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? 6-0. The minutes are approved. Kayla, we'll go to treasurer report.
Okay, so this is my first treasurer report, and I want to thank Jill for this. We'll start with the off warrant, and the off warrant, checks written for the month were 207,102.03. And I think everyone should have an attachment, that lists out every single check there. You can see that there are 3 payroll cycles in this month. So that's the bulk of it. A lot of the checks that were really, internet and health benefits, so. Do you have any questions about the specifics? So we'll look at that. Motion to accept the off warrant now? Correct?
Okay, so we gotta read the whole thing, so.
Oh.
Yeah, it was. Motion to accept the off warrant in the amount of $207,102.03 for the period of January 14th, 2026 through February 19th, 2026 as a. Kayla, second, discussion, comment? All in favor? Aye. You're on.
On the warrant, there's a detailed listing of, the checks for the warrant, and the amount of the checks is $139,010.75. There's detail for each, looking through those quickly, most of the things on there are self-explanatory. I don't think there's, at the bottom, there's legal services, which may not be something that you normally see here, but you have review contracts. There is, the air handler unit, which is a large, expense, was written on page 257. You know, things that anyone any questions?
Right, the president signed the warrant for the period of January 14th, 2026 through February 19th, 2026 in the amount of $139,010.75. And this motion and second from Doug, discussion, comments? All in favor?
Right.
6-0. Okay. All right.
Included is the 2026 budget versus actual. The year is 13.7% over with. So you can see on the actual, we have a total revenue $663,588.78. We have a total operating expenses of $338,935.81. That leaves us with a net operating revenue of $324,652.90. The expenditures you can see is about at 13.13, which is about where we are in the year, so that's about right. The balance sheet. Anyone has any questions? The net revenue there is, which ties back to the budget versus actual, is $240,096.33. But not least is the restricted in rates. You can see, we're new in 2026, there's the new grants, which is revenue 2026, for $39,050. This is the new grants for this year.
The budget versus actual.
Yes.
You said goes way over budget.
For net operating revenue.
Yeah.
That looks like it's accidentally. Well, no, it's not accidentally. It's that we have insurance proceeds in there that were not budgeted. We have library charges, we're at 21% there. Interest is down though. Interest and earnings is down. That's because we haven't had we don't have our check yet for the tax levy in there earning interest. So I wouldn't necessarily say it's off from our predictions yet till we see that. And we have not received our tax money yet, but we did receive our contract from Skodak. So we've received the full amount, well, not budgeted, but the full expected. And we've received almost 70% of our budgeted gifts and grants for the year. So it kind of skews where we are for the revenue for the year.
Is that similar on the next page, the balance sheet? Again, right there, it says it's roughly 75% change or.
Yeah, that's gonna be net revenue change is because that, well, the 321, 472, 41, that's almost exactly the construction grant that we received. It was in December.
more. Thank you.
Capital project funds, the details in there, can't speak to this as much, I haven't, but you can see, let me just open up.
We've got for our total, we've got a couple different things on here. We've got our current construction grant, which he mentioned that we received, you received the revenue in advance 90%. So we received the revenue in December of 24. The project took place in 25. We'll close it out in 26. So that total budget is just shy of 700,000. To date, we've received 312,620 in revenue, and we have paid 598,611. We are on target right now. We still have about 15,000 in contingency funds, and there's really not a lot remaining except for that front entryway replacement. So we're in good shape for our project, our current construction project. And then we've got the interior renovations from the roof leak. This is just a sort of breakdown from insurance. That is going to change as the project happens, because it's just, what insurance said it's going to cost is going to change based on the actuals, or it keeps changing. But that's on there just so you see, as of right now, that project is almost $779,000. That does not include the children's room carpet, so that would be additional. We'll talk about that later. Then below that chart, you have a chart about the air handler unit. This will be the last time you're going to see that. That'll come off this list because that project is no longer, we're not carrying that money anymore. The board last year in June approved allocating 70,000 from our non-restricted capital reserves for this project. We did close it out this month. The total, we didn't need to use any of the contingencies, so we closed out $6,000 under budget, so that there's nothing we need to do. That money is still in our non-restricted capital reserves, that'll come off. And then just down below is just kind of talking about what we have covered for things. We answer questions. Anything? Sure.
Done. The motion to approve the February 19th, 2026 financials with 13.7% of the year completed at the time. Doug, second, Sarah, on the discussion, comments. Seeing none, all in favor? 6-0, motion carries. Great job, Crystal. Appreciate it. Thank you, Bill.
No, definitely.
Back now, we've been doing it for a while. We appreciate it. Right, so we'll move on to Services Committee. Jordan, not here tonight, obviously. So I'll just run through our bonus meetings last time, but yeah, she's a good here. You can travel. It's the season, right? But so yeah, you see here that the three action items the committee went through to discuss the Friends fundraising, discussion planning and innovations and impact on public services. To see there's on the Friends fundraising piece, there's an motion, and we've got a couple items for further discussion too. Anything I add on those two there?
No, I think that's
Awesome. All right, so for that, then we've got, we're gonna recommend that the full board approve the one-day liquor license for the Friends Evening fundraiser.
I have a question.
Oh.
The reason why we didn't do it last time is that we have a policy in place that there's no alcohol out on premises.
Yes,
So why is this
This-
different this time?
I feel like it would be
it's a one day.
one time.
Right, but that was,
exception.
but that was also the brought up last time, so.
They asked us to reconsider.
Yeah,
So
I mean, I
is there something in the policy that allows us to do a one-time exception? Like, That's what like, I don't
think there's anything saying there isn't.
right, but that's what I'm, like, we had this discussion last time.
No, I remember,
Yeah,
but
that's-
I don't think there's anything saying that there can't be a one-time exception.
That's what I wanna know, cause we
Yeah.
voted no last time for this exact reason, now it's coming back, I just
And
wanna,
I don't think there was,
right. like-
but I think it came to us too late last time.
Right, and we didn't have a chance to.
And we didn't have a chance to like talk about it, but now
Now
that
we have
it's
the time.
February,
So-
it's not until.
Are we doing it in October, is it being held in October again,
I would assume.
or is she,
I
like,
think there's also, it's a plan, so they can plan
Yeah,
for it as
right.
part of the scope, as they start to, do the fundraising event in fall or not.
It's October 3rd.
Yeah.
A Saturday night.
So
and that's
And this
fair
would-
to ask, I just wanna, like,
I don't think there's anything.
because that was in, or that
Bidding.
was, that was.
Like saying that there can't be like a prohibiting exception.
Right, but I wanna make sure that we have our ducks in a row, because that is a policy we have, that there's no alcohol on site.
Well, it says illegal drug use or possession, including open containers of alcohol. That is an example of an illegal activity under general expectations for library conduct. So it wouldn't necessarily be illegal if we were.
If we were-
our license.
But our meeting, what is that, isn't that the policy we cited
I
that,
think we have to get a liquor license anyway, so therefore it would not make it illegal.
but what is the meeting?
Say.
Please use your time in court.
Because I'm sure we've had like groups that have expressed interest in having like wine tasting and things like that.
That was a big discussion with our meeting policy, right?
Right,
So the meeting room policy says the East Greenbush Community Library provides meeting rooms for public use when not reserved for library sponsored functions. This policy governs their use. So this actually wouldn't cover the Friends because this is an event.
Library.
It's a library event.
It's not an outside.
Right, so this
Yeah.
wouldn't prohibit it.
I mean, I'm not trying to like find.
Oh, no,
reason not
yeah.
to, I'm just trying to find
Great question.
Yeah, I don't think, I
like,
don't think it really
I just don't wanna find out,
say yes and then find out.
yeah, that,
Sure, we're violating our bonds.
and then have somebody who we said no to say, hey, wait a minute. You guys did this, why can't we do X, Y, Z?
I don't think it would violate that because we say that the meeting room policy is for. It's
Outside.
outside, not
Organizations.
reserved, yeah, for public use when it's not reserved for library. Sponsored functions. I think that's how you get away with that one, the code of conduct one, I think it's.
It doesn't, if we get a liquor license, that makes it legal. Really.
I think if we were gonna amend. This is my thought. I think if we were gonna amend the meeting room policy, that would allow us to offer those like nuanced one-offs to groups if we wanted to.
I mean, I don't think that would be
Without-
interesting because I think doing a craft beer thing would be interesting.
I think it would get
being
people
that-
more in.
I think that would be something that would bring people to the library. I would like to see it go in that direction. I've seen other libraries do that as well, so I don't have an objection in that way. I just wanna make sure that if we're gonna do this, that we're not gonna be like.
Should we vote on it and then kick it back to one of the committees to put in maybe a
Yeah, to review the meeting room or whatever, and
review the meeting room, I'll say maybe make a.
Yeah, we can add it to our list.
So I think is it Julian had mentioned a point that it's. The catering company does the work, so I think there's a difference, and it would depend on the six years it's served. If
The
you wanna
other-
do like your craft brewing, is it us as the library versus?
I think they would have to.
Yeah,
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 they would
just-
have to
yeah.
have a license.
Yeah.
But again, this would have to be like, but the other concern I have too is a lot of the volunteers that we had at the night at the library were kids.
Yeah, but I could
I
sell
don't know.
alcohol at 16.
Like, yeah, but they were middle schoolers.
Well, she's saying the guests. Like, no, the servers and stuff for middle school.
so this would-
Liquor license.
Yeah.
It's a catering company.
So,
We would,
like-
no volunteers would be giving out.
Oh,
Yeah, it would be
It
the
would be
catering
like a
company.
bar attendant, like
Yeah,
Yes.
hash bar where you would, they would,
yeah, it would probably
they
be
would run,
something along.
like, run or.
So
whatever
like
it
the
is.
kids wouldn't be like.
No.
No,
No,
But
and the
like-
liability would be on
The catering.
The catering company, they do a 1-day liquor license, they go through the state to get the license.
Yeah.
It comes to us
That's,
and they hold the liability, they
It's
know
kinda like
how
when
to
you-
check ID.
now is that gonna
And like a
affect
wedding.
us having those kid volunteers though, is my question.
No, it's just like a restaurant, you can have people of all ages
Okay.
in and around it, you just can't serve them.
Well, it's kind of like having
And
a
we're not
wedding on
buying.
your own property, you have to get the one.
All
just
great
wonder.
questions.
Just make sure, cause we don't wanna like not involve like the middle schoolers if. Cause they were great helpers, honestly. They were
Yeah.
Fantastic. I know, cause I had like 6 of them keep coming up and getting hot chocolate.
So this is the only thing that I think could potentially prohibit it. Now that I looked at one more policy. The programming policy. No. And so the programming policy is what we follow for our programs. The meeting room policy is what outside groups follow. And ours say food and non-alcoholic beverages are permitted. It doesn't say,
It doesn't say that alcoholic beverages are not. permitted.
it doesn't say they're prohibited, but it says food, but it explicitly states food and non-alcoholic beverages are permitted.
But it doesn't say that alcoholic beverages are.
So maybe we kick that one back for review? Or is
Yeah.
it-
I think they're two different things that we.
I mean,
we
I
have to
think
figure
we're
out what are
okay,
we-
but I also think we should. You just
Right. I
to
guess
firm up.
we have to figure out, do we want, is the intent looking in the future at potentially allowing alcohol? Is it by outside groups that are borrowing the library? Or is it only something that's library sponsored?
That's,
I mean, they're two different things.
Yeah, I would kick that back to
We
committee.
could kick them both to just have that philosophical
Yeah.
conversation before even a policy revision
that's a
is made.
perfect thing for services committee to ask.
Yeah.
Honestly, I mean, it's as you said, a philosophical question,
Yes.
but,
I think we can. vote
But I
the
think,
motion
yeah, that
right
was,
now,
that was
because
my
it doesn't-
concern when I saw this on the packet, I just wanted to make sure that we weren't violating
Specifically
one of
say.
our policies. With this liquor license today before we.
Yeah.
If
I
we're
think we
committing
can vote
to
on
it,
it today,
yeah, that's what I wanted to make sure of.
because it doesn't say.
Cause something in my brain was like, I know there was a reason why we didn't do it last time.
And it was so close that we just didn't have the time.
That was the
to-
part I wasn't
kick it
remembering, but there was a lot going on in, when we were voting on that, so.
Yeah, I don't even remember that section, so that's.
There's like, it was just like triggering something, I was like, I know there's something here, so.
Do we have to vote on this? Is that the language in the programming policies, by agreed to specifically say prohibited, it does specifically say what is allowed, and
Right,
it's not listed as allowed.
But in the same vein, it's not.
you can read it again, do you mind?
Nope, not at all. It says, food and non-alcoholic beverages are permitted.
That's all it says. It doesn't say anything.
And this is under the,
This is under the programming policy, so that is any group
For us.
activity offered to the public that library staff have coordinated, planned, and or presented, whether offered in or out of the library, which actually
This
isn't
isn't
even,
even-
that's not even us either.
no,
Yeah,
it's
it's
the
the friends.
Co-sponsored,
Yeah,
so
we haven't,
you go back to the code of conduct?
yes.
so the Friends isn't technically the staff either.
Oh, so it's kind of in a gray area.
So
It's
it's
not the staff, then it's gotta be an outside group, right? It's an either or situation.
Friends is, they're
They're
not an
right
outside group, but they're also not staff.
It's a co-sponsored.
In the,
volunteer.
What does the code of conduct pertain to? Is it
Everybody.
patrons?
Welcomes all visitors. This is about library visitor. We have general expectations, examples of prohibited behaviors. And under illegal activity, there's different categories: unsafe or disruptive, misuse of property or privileges, illegal or failure to follow staff instructions. And under illegal is illegal drug use or possession, including open containers of alcohol.
But technically, it wouldn't be illegal because they would have.
Yeah, I think because you're explicitly voting for a one-time thing,
Yeah,
you would be okay.
and then the Friends isn't really covered by either, because they're not technically the general public, but they're also not staff.
It's covered in the MOU.
Yeah.
But there's nothing of alcohol in our memorandum of understanding. That could be something we add in the MOU if we wanted to, I don't know.
But if they're not an outside group and they're not the library,
It's a cost.
they're not covered by anything, they could bring.
They're covered by the MOU.
Right, I mean, they could do anything they
No,
wanted.
And your business.
drugs are not,
And their business.
Well, bad example, bad example.
drugs are not
But
covered.
they're not covered by anything, they can.
They're
do
covered by the
anything.
MOU, but
Covered
the
by
MOU doesn't,
Code of conduct too, if they're.
yeah, the code of conduct is blanket for everyone. But they're governed by the MOU, which doesn't say anything about alcohol use.
I mean, we don't have a fundraising policy, we have a gifts and donation policy, this is essentially a fundraiser. We have a partnership policy.
We should probably put the fundraising policy in.
You give it the board services committee, someone to work case.
I mean, but the
I'll swap over.
MOU clearly identifies that the Friends are the fundraising arm of the library, and it kind of says, like, the library is in charge of programming. Friends are in charge of fundraising, and so when there's questions, because a lot of times the Friends will come up with fantastic ideas for programs, they'll say, I don't want this to be a Friends program. And we'll say, well, you can't, because then we're getting into library versus Friends.
Yes.
So that's not, so the fundraising is really their role. But I see what you're saying, I just don't know.
I don't see anything in any of these documents. That's wrong.
Exactly, yeah, I don't see
Voting on a one-day
anything,
liquor
yeah, a one day, one time, and then just kicking it back
I mean, that's not to
to,
say maybe we need to refine some.
yeah, kicking it back to the committees afterwards, because we definitely need to go over.
Well, at the services committee meeting, I supported this, I see no issue with it, except for that policy. And I think that the board who existed when that policy was written made a decision to exclude alcohol, right? They made a decision to say non-alcoholic beverages,
Yes.
which means alcohol would not be acceptable. I think if we want to do this, we should change that policy.
Yeah, you can almost have it.
But given that, the way that policy reads, I would vote.
So we would have to change the policy, if you wanted to go about it like that. We would I don't think you would necessarily need to change because this policy is all about programming offered to the public. That libraries, I mean, programs are defined as any group activity offered to the public that library staff have coordinated, planned, and or presented, whether offered in or out of the library.
We are the co-sponsor of the event.
It's not a program. It's not an event policy, it's a programming policy. But I totally hear what you're saying, and I think if that definition wasn't in there, then
Somebody made the decision that it's important.
there was a lot of decision making about this. And I would say that the last board was pretty adamant that no alcohol was allowed on site. That's my recollection, right? I think you're right in that there was like an overall general sense that there should not be alcohol allowed on library property anywhere. I don't necessarily. Yeah, that's gonna be up to you guys.
I mean, if that read, unless specifically authorized by the board, then non-alcoholic beverages are permitted.
But then would you have to change the definition of programs?
It's not a full thing.
It's not a program.
I mean, I think, to me, that's the piece that, like, I think that might have been part of the intent. But I don't think that
It's not a program.
it's not a program, and that's where we need like,
It's a gray area. It's not a,
More like if staff was putting on a program about scrap.
yes.
That's gonna be special.
like a wine.
But that would be like the program that Amanda was talking about, that would be under this, so
Right.
we would not be able
Right.
to have that
Not
program
be
without
into-
changing this
Right.
policy. than one time.
But because the fundraising.
I'd still be okay with.
We vote on it and still kick it back to affirmative language, so.
Yeah.
you have more control of.
Yeah, we can
Which,
still
like,
vote
yeah,
and
even if it says like, unless considered, you know, like. Programming or fundraising,
Yeah, 'cause I
unless
think we
considered by the board, you know,
put the-
voted on by
okay,
the
yeah.
board, like, so that it's like, well, it's not a blanket yes, but.
Right.
Every instance needs to be addressed.
What if you amended the motion to recommend that, like to do the recommendation for the one day? And then with the understanding that the library services committee would also review all library policies to determine.
With the assumption that the services committee, which I'm a member, is gonna take some action. That action hasn't happened.
Yeah, I wouldn't amend it, I would not amend it, I would make it either, I would either make it a separate motion or just do it.
I would just do the one motion and kick it back to the.
Yeah, just take the vote and see what happens.
I wonder too, if we were saying earlier, right, like the friends, if it's helpful for planning, is there that big of a distinction between the February and March meetings? We did it in the March committee meetings. We had a table. We figure out anything, we figure out language in the interim and then. Do it next month. Yeah, do it next month, read it April.
What time of year was it when they came last year asking the same thing?
After the whole kerfuffle.
So it was very close to the event.
Oh,
It's
yeah,
I
closer,
mean,
yeah.
now we're like,
2 months, we're,
8-9 months out.
they also have started planning it now, so they're just looking. I think if they had a
'Cause I think
general
they put it
sense that
together.
overall the intent is yes, unless we have an overall consensus that the intent is no. Then they could
Do you
continue with our
wanna,
planning and then you could wait till.
you wanna take like a non-strong vote? Yeah, consensus?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Just say, I say yeah.
I support the idea with balancing out the policies.
Yeah,
right? Like,
I support
I
it.
would say.
Yeah, I think we all feel that.
I think everyone
I think-
is leaning towards yes.
The
maybe you
problem
can
is
go back and
just
tell-
Tell them that.
to have
tell
our
them that.
policies in place to make this work.
So it's all
Fair.
yes, right? It's
Yeah.
not committing that we're gonna approve it, but everyone is leaning toward approving it.
Right,
Under-
everything could change.
Yeah, under the issue
Yeah,
of.
so then I would.
Yeah, don't get
Exactly.
Start to think in the long term, when you look at the catering options.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, so, yeah,
So we'll reconsider the motion.
Yeah.
What are the policies for the weekend? Definitely that,
Programming.
programming.
We don't know if that falls under programming.
I think you're gonna have to
I think you gotta look at programming.
look at
Special
We need
events.
to look at them all in its entirety.
Yeah.
and maybe even put one out that's for. Where this is,
Well, you said we don't have a fundraising policy.
right,
Right.
because it's the friends that technically do the fundraiser, and they're not paid staff, so it's not really a staff thing. So they're not paid, they're volunteer,
And when you have the MOU.
and there's nothing in the MOU. So like, it's kind of one of those things that's like,
Continue in the circle of.
Yeah.
See the MOU, well, the MOU says the policy part, so you're just like circling on yourself. Or you just have it in the flexibility of having the MOU that you sign, and that's the whole universe of fundraising for the library.
yeah, we can put it in that way, but we'd have to.
Yes.
So how about I review the MOU, the programming policy, the meeting room policy, and the code of conduct policies to see where this might fit and where we are.
Yes.
And then we can discuss at the board meeting. If we need a new policy or if we need to amend
Sure.
policies. Okay.
Just a light take. Sorry.
No,
Did not mean to,
that's part of the process, right?
yeah. They just, they clicked something in there, I was like, there was a reason why we didn't do it next time, besides
the time crunch.
Great. With that, we'll move on to, Evan.
Very good. So the audit was done in 3 days, like they said, it was did pretty well. So we do have one motion for that, and the motion is the administrative committee moves to amend the 2026 budget to reflect the actual Skodak contract to 462,000, which will be offset by an additional 55,090 from the unassigned fund balance. I did want to note that this will not cost the public any money, because we discussed that in the meeting, and we figured that with the renewed interest in all of this, we needed to explicitly state that anytime that funds are transferred. Like, this is money we already have that we're just transferring.
Well, that makes more sense.
Sarah, I'll second it. Any comments?
Basically, we're all we're doing, taking money out of savings.
That's what library checking. Is that right? If you-
Basically, yeah.
Budget.
Yeah.
Process.
All in favor?
There's no second.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, so Sarah seconded.
Oh, yeah.
So just Sarah's the second then.
Yes.
And there was no vote, right, for the
Yeah, hold on the service.
prior one.
It was tabled. We also discussed facilities, the roof renovation will be in 3 weeks. The cost, like it was on the thing, was 178,000. It encompasses most of the rooms, and it's peat molding, carpet repairs. We do need a further discussion on the repairs of the children's room carpet, because we did discuss if we want to just do that in one full sweep. And then flooring in some areas are a trip hazard. We discussed the future bathroom renovations that are gonna be 6 single stall bathrooms and a lactation room. Then the roof, we have a motion to authorize the director to engage with the Hyman Hayes Associates for the purpose of the roof project. So that's just
Architect.
yeah, that's the architect that we are going to get the quote from, right? Or
So we have, this is the proposal that was included in the grant proposal, the amount is in the grant proposal budget for $28,000, and this is for all the design drawings, which they've been working on this. They've been working on this project already,
Yeah.
because they were working with us on last project, and
we just needed a motion.
we need a motion to actually engage them.
We have any responsibility to go out to bid for projects like this?
We do for the project, but not for the architect. And we did go through an extensive process when hiring the architect and the construction manager advisor for the last project, and these have sort of like, we keep going with that. We did a whole interview process with different companies. But that's a great question.
You do it, the better off we are because
Yeah.
we're getting instructions.
Yeah, and so I do want to bring up one other unknown that I have since looked at and asked a clarifying question and haven't gotten an answer yet in time for this meeting is, so we talked about the unknown with projects because they had, it's the time frame for projects. We typically wouldn't get our money until December of this year-ish, between September and December from the state, most likely. And we haven't received an official notification from the state yet that we are awarded this project. So we've received the notification from Upper Hudson that they were in approval, forwarding it, but we haven't finalized going through the DASNY review process. The other, and then what part of what we talked about in admin was with everything with the roof leak, you know, we have kind of a responsibility to go through this project no matter what. It can't wait another year for another construction project. However, there's one nuance here because I wanted to have the work be done before summer. Eligible expenses for a grant are started in June of 25. But it's the library match and the grant expenses start July 1, 26. So I asked the question, can we engage? Like, is it when we pay the check or is it when we engage the contractor, the roofer, because, and all the subcontracts that go along with it? Because there will be HVAC and there'll be plumbing up there to do and stuff like that. And I don't have an answer yet. So that, the timeline of this project, we probably,
So should we table this?
no, I think we still need the architect no matter what. I think just knowing that my original timeline had this project done by summer reading. There is a chance that we might have to do the roof over the summer, and I would not recommend waiting until the fall. I would think that we would just have to do it during the summer. And so that's the only
Especially
thing
with
that I
the-
just wanna, I don't know the answer to that yet. That's the other kind of thing that I hadn't. Close before to figure it. Or it usually has a lot of components, so there's a lot of match, and there are match, but like we wanted to close it out by July 1, so that makes it tricky. So just putting that. Boring news out there.
The other thing you have to watch is there is a decision that's expected to come out in Broome, there's a case in Broome County. Called, I forget what it's called, but it's about piggybacking public works. If we were planning on doing that, I would hold off on doing that because there's supposed to be a decision about piggybacking that's gonna come down from the public circuit. That might be applicable to all public works.
Meaning what?
That they may or may not allow piggybacking on.
What do you mean by piggyback?
Like if you have one contractor that bids, they can then pick up like subsequent smaller bids that come along with that instead of having to go up to bid for like like,
Oh,
yeah. So like if you have like one job and then like a bunch of little jobs, so you know, like they usually just like pick them
Yes.
up. There's a case in Broome County where they, the school district did that and then, a contractor sued. They found them, found out that the judge there said, no, you can't do that, can't do that. So they appealed it, you know, it's upheld only in Broome County, so then they appealed it to the appellate court, it's being held, the argument's being held right now, decision's expected to come out in, June or July, but we don't know what the decision's gonna be. So
that would be like.
we
you-
typically go out to the subcontractors separately anyways.
So like if you hired Charlie for something, and then Charlie showed around and hired Amanda for
Yeah.
like something smaller,
Yeah, it's,
right? That would kind of be,
Would it be if we hired a general contractor and then they hired roofers, they hired
um,
plumbers, they hired, or is this additional scope?
I think it's, I'm not sure of the distinction, I'll have to check at work, but I'm not really sure on that, but I just know that. That is like, I forget the exact definition, let me look up the case.
Afterwards too.
But this current motion is only about the architect.
Engaging.
Yeah, this is only,
For a
sorry,
planning process,
Yeah.
design and planning,
Design of it, yeah.
not all the rest of the work that
No.
could be held up due to other
Yes,
things.
Correct.
right, yeah, sorry.
No, it's okay, it's important.
This is all like really good stuff.
I mean,
Any other questions on the architect fees?
second,
Oh, this is government agency from an existing competitive bid from another agency. So does that mean we couldn't use the state contract?
I don't, sorry.
Second, what you guys please, and then.
Well, that is a, I hope that doesn't pass because the amount of work that will pass on to smaller entities.
Yeah,
Is just a
that's
nightmare.
why a lot of people are watching them very carefully. So heads up on that, I don't really understand it, so that's why I said I don't.
That has nothing to do with this.
Okay, that's.
do you second?
Oh, yes.
Never.
Discussion comment? All in favor? 6-0 for 8%.
Alright, And then we also had a discussion about, the wonderful donation by the Chadwick family. You know, that was the family that lost their little boy, last year, I think it was almost a year ago. They donated the Draw Alive. It's like a interactive thing. They also had a party, I think.
Yeah, they go to mountain party.
Yeah.
Donated some stuff to the playground.
And so we talked about, I think you said that they were going to purchase a plaque, but we also wanted to put a motion out to purchase a plaque for a commemorative plaque recognizing their generous gifts honoring Liam Chadwick. Just a little something.
Yeah, and just to kind of add a few more things, there will be at 9 o'clock on Friday morning before we open, we're having a small ribbon cutting. So if anybody would like to come, the Chadwick family will be there, as well as Wade Chaff, who donated the install. They did
For
that
free,
For
yeah.
free.
They donated the whole list.
The draw.
This is something, is this the type of thing we think the family would want?
They
talked about it.
Yes, we've talked about it with the family, so now, so our gifts and donation policy has the library board.
Yeah, so we just did the motion just to kind of authorize in case if they don't purchase it, we wanted to get a gesture of goodwill, purchase
Well, and also you guys need to authorize that we're gonna hang up a sign.
Yeah.
You know, that we're gonna commemorative plaque, because
it. Yeah, cause we just
there has
can't
to
hang
be
up.
willy-nilly, we'd have signs everywhere.
Yeah,
Wonderful thing.
so the committee made the motion.
Any discussion, comments? All in favor? That's a leader. So much. All right, moving on, is there anything for unfinished business? So we'll move on to liaison reports, and Candy sent in a couple updates from Upper Hudson. So the first is that Upper Hudson is going to provide resources for member libraries, so that they're going to help with compliance for the website compatibility and access guidelines, which are coming online in April. And those are gonna help make web content more accessible for folks with disabilities. She then said advocacy day was well attended. The assembly member who represents libraries in the county, including East Greenbush. His bullet award came through, so there's 40,000 distributed to the 13 libraries in his district. The Upper Hudson Library Board President, he's going to create a subcommittee to discuss how the Upper Hudson Board is going to function. Then on programming, March Manga Madness is all set. 11 libraries are going to participate. And the Comics Plus launch had some wrinkles, but those are worked out. Comments? Thank you for the update. Not seeing any other liaisons, so we'll move to director's reports.
Okay. So in general, we are still seeing increased foot traffic at the library website, meeting reviews up. We have some modest gains in our youth and adult program attendance. Our one-to-one program attendance is down, and that's because we're no longer offering craft. We would curate about 500 some odd crafts a month to go out for people to take. We had a staffing change and COVID, so this is a good time to kind of look at that and see if it's worth, getting your behavior about. the problem with this impact. So that will change, it will have an impact on on the stats, the one-to-one programs, because it's considered a one-to-one program, but I'm not worried about. That's why. Then, I mean, overall youth teen engagement up 41%, winter reading program started. We've already read just, shy of 12,000 minutes. Great news. That's a really important thing. Our collections lending is down. It's continuing to drop. I think in January, especially lending is down, and even computer use is down in January, and that's because of the roof leak. And we had for more than half of January, we had a whole bay of computers that were not available. We do have a lot of people coming in, so and then snow closures and everything else. So I think there's a piece. Oh, some of it is tied to the collections not being available and the computers not being available. But not all of it. I think there's still a decline in our circulation. We've got a new collaboration with New York State Department of Tax and Finance for tax prep for folks. We're still the Career Center going strong. We're coordinating with the YMCA for summer programming. Moving on to the roof replacement project, we are just tidying up the bid documents. I will find out the answer to that before we finalize that, because that will have an impact on the timeline. We had hoped to go out to bid the first week in March, and I think we can probably still do that as long as I get an answer. It would just change the timeline potentially of when they would need to be this project. So we have received the insurance funds for the preliminary insurance funds for the roof leak remediations that are needed. We paid the remediation already with that check. They've already been paid for the remediation, and now the renovations required because of the roof leak, that we're looking at just shy of $200,000 for that project. And what we can talk about, we talked about it briefly in admin. I have some more information about the carpet, potential children's room carpet proposal. So essentially I have gone out asking for quotes for the carpet replacement. And then we have a clear carpet replacement figure that's just shy of $40,000, but that does not include moving anything. And that's where the big unknowns are. I've gotten quotes. I have one quote that's around $65,000 in total to include the moving.
The carpet and.
The carpet, moving everything for the children's room. And then then I have another quote saying that they will do the work at no higher than $50,000, everything included, but and how much that they would, bill us for, that they would tweak the project based on if we were to, like, an hourly rate, $82.75 per hour, up to 8 hours a day, then it becomes time and a half. But they said that they would agree to $50,000 for that. So that's a quick response. I think there's still some more. I need to really, because I had them now going out to ask library moving companies, because they hopefully will be less expensive and more equipped to do this, because they're saying something like to move stuff. So long story short, we are looking at, I think it is because we're in the middle of this renovations that we didn't anticipate having to do right now. We had money set aside in our non-restricted capital reserves and our operating fund for various capital expenditures this year. I think it makes sense for us to mobilize folks who are doing carpet once. I think it will cost less and push off some of the other projects that we had anticipated for this year. And so we would still work with, it wouldn't require the board to allocate any new funds because we would work within our current budgeted funds, but we would just push off those other projects till 2027. And so I think that I would like to request authorization to proceed not to exceed $65,000. I think I can get it for 50, but I wanted really work through with them because this is the company that's doing the remediation and make sure there's not any weird things that are happening between the two contracts with that. So that's why I would like to request authorization to proceed with replacing the children's room carpet at the same time instead of doing. So I have the details of like what I would change, but basically the gist of it is we had 29,000 in parking lot repairs and 17,500 in furniture in our capital reserves that I would basically allocate towards flooring. And we still have some money in our operating budget set aside for that. That would not change. It wouldn't change any of our operating budgets. This is just our non-restricted capital reserve budgeted amounts that we anticipated. So we can talk about that afterwards. Any other questions about?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to throw a comment out there. My spouse absolutely loves the new comics app.
Does
He's not like a big, like, he doesn't have a library. But he loves, like, he uses that person part and he logs on, he's been using that. He loves that there's a lot of indie titles that he can't get elsewhere and he's been using that app like crazy, so. Thank you for getting that.
Awesome. Fantastic. And we are planning a big EG-Con.
Yeah, we're already excited for that. So
Yes.
we already got our ticket punched for that.
Also,
We're comfortable, so.
fantastic. I also wanted to mention this, that we applied for a regional collections grant to digitize the history of the library. And basically, we've already got a lot of the stuff curated and we have a whole sort of social media and website component of this. I've already seen a draft on the website regardless of the grant, but the grant would be to digitize it. And that's for this, so we will archive all of the things that we already have. Library is a little bit of an Eastern Bishop history, but it's mostly the library. Hopefully that's $2,740. Hopefully we will get that grant. That grant it's basically for the equipment required to digitize. That's essentially what it is. And then that would be uploaded to New York Heritage. So it's a resource that anybody, you can access it. Not that stuff, but you can access other primary sources through New York Heritage. Are there any other questions about? And so a couple of updates before we talk about the forfeit, because I would like you guys, I'm hoping you'll discuss that tonight. Okay. Yeah, I guess I could update you. The only other quick update is that we are continuing to refine how long it's gonna, what the renovations will look like. And it looks like it is a 5 to 6 week project. It will start. Soonest it will start is 2 weeks from now. 3 weeks, probably. So we'll be done in June, sometime in June. It will require 5 days closure of the children's room, if we do the children's room. I mean, that's gonna happen no matter what, which year we do it, it's gonna require 5 days. We think we're not gonna actually have to close. We'll close sections of the main library, but we think we can do, originally we had said that we were gonna have to close at least one day, at least a couple days for the front, right by the circulation desk. But they are going to work with insurance to mobilize nights and weekends. Now, I have put in the children's that I don't want them to do that because that would cost us a lot more to mobilize nights and weekends if insurance is not covering it at prevailing wage. So that's why we would be closed down for days. They said if we did the whole project all at once, it would be 2 weeks of closing, which means 3 weeks, because nothing is completely timed for a project of that scope. I still think it makes more sense to do it in phases, even though it will be disruption for 6 weeks in the library. The teen room will have to be closed down for 2 to 3 days, and the her room will have to be closed down for 2 to 3 days, so, and the children's room for 5 days, so that will all have an impact on public service. I think it's very worthwhile to hold up. I mean, it's gonna have to be done this year or next year, no matter what. So I guess the question that I have before you is, could we I guess amend the scope of the current renovations from the roof leak to add the, I don't know what the terminology would be, but to add the children's room permit replacement to the scope of the project, and that would be covered out of our non-restricted capital reserves. With no, I don't think there's any official budget amendments because it's the same amounts that we are allocating. It's just kind of which projects we will be doing. So understanding that if we did this, that would mean that we push off the parking lot is the big piece.
Yeah.
The parking lot to the following year. And include the
I think that
carpets
makes more
this year.
sense.
Yeah.
You had mentioned, I think informally, giving everything.
Yes,
At some point in the future.
that is
Is that
coming.
what you're talking about? Or
No.
you're just talking about small repair?
No, I'm talking about repaving the parking. We also have a complete, like a resurfacing of the parking lot, not taking it down to the gravel.
Like seal coating your driveway?
Exactly.
Instead of tearing.
Instead of tearing. Now, we do need to tear up the entire road, and that's on 3 ways. I have met with them. They're going out for bids for renovations. We do have money budgeted this year.
But that's not the money you're talking.
That's not the money I'm talking about. Those repairs will still happen. That big project still needs to happen. We're trying to figure out the scope of that and get some quotes so we can figure out how big a project this is. I mean, that could happen probably 2028. But possibly 2027. Oh, yeah, we have patching this year.
Yeah, cause that area right.
Oh, yeah. It needs to be repaid now. It's kind of like the roof. It's time. The other organizations are not even close to being able to have the funds to do their share, and we would not be able to afford to cost on our own. So we've met twice this year already about it. Just have to keep going with it.
But that's 2 years out.
That's 2 years now. Yeah.
So do you need a motion from us for this or?
Yeah,
Changing your budget or?
It wants to be authorized for up to $75,000.
I would say up to
If there's
65, or not to exceed 60. Thank you for the carpet replacement.
Give away.
Here's the wording that I put together. I recommend the board authorize the library director to amend the current insurance repairs project to include the children's room carpet replacement not to exceed 65,000 without further board approval.
So, motion and second.
Discussion? All in favor? Right, 6-0.
Thank you very much.
Committee meetings.
Got a lot of work to do. Thanks.
Well,
Bye.
Thanks. For director of
Nothing else for the director report. We do have a personnel them in there.
Yeah, whatever.
Okay, so this is, we have, Kara Eckhart, who was a substitute. Resignation on January 27th. And then we have 3 provisional appointments. This Meg Kelly, who started February 16th as a librarian, 1 part-time. Sean Klupfer, library assistant, part-time, started February 17th. And then a very recent part-time library assistant who resigned, coming back as a substitute effective January 27th. So we have at this time no open or unfilled positions with this.
Sure, but it happened. I said it's rare, but it happened.
And I've been working with civil service too to update job descriptions and get some titles into the New York Helps program as well.
Oh, unofficial list. Really good.
Yeah, they haven't had any library lists in Rensselaer County since I've been here. There are 2 lists that have come out. And so we can at least get them on New York City Helps. Yeah.
All right, so left for new business.
We have to vote to do something.
Oh, yes.
Oh,
To be adopted.
Oh, yeah.
Accept.
Yeah.
Oh, there is no motion.
Right, yeah, that's me.
We do need a motion.
Yeah.
Motion to approve.
Wasn't on my, but.
Motion to approve. Personnel.
Motion to approve personnel memorandum dated February 24th, 2026. Amanda, and I'll second it. All in favor? All right. 5-0. Now we'll move on to the new business, the final audit motion. So we've got, as the agenda indicates, we've got the documents from the audit team that were distributed. So a motion to approve the final audit for 2025. And I'll second it. Any discussions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
0. All right. And then with that, everyone's favorite motion, looking to adjourn the February 24th, 2026 library. Amanda and Crystal as a second. Discussion, comments, all in favor? 5-0. Perfect. Thanks, everyone. Good work.